betrayed and broken, but I made them regret everything. Marcus never believed in blind trust. Trust, to him, was a carefully placed investment, one that had to be earned, nurtured, protected. And yet, for Olivia, he had made an exception. For 10 years, he had built a life with her. He had been her rock, her protector, her confidant. Every late-night conversation, every whispered secret, every dream they had mapped out together. He had believed in all of it. Until tonight. Until he found the text messages. It had started as a casual thing. His phone had died, and Olivia's was charging on the kitchen counter. He had picked it up, intending only to check the time. But the screen had lit up with a message that changed everything. Can't wait to see you again. I miss you. A message from Brian, his best friend. Marcus felt the ground beneath him shift, his reality cracking at the seams. At first, his brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a misunderstanding, a message meant for someone else. But his gut, that primal instinct honed by years of reading people in his business dealings, told him otherwise. His hand steady, he unlocked the phone. Olivia's passcode, his birth date, was still the same. Ironic. She had no idea she had already given him the key to her betrayal. The messages stretched back for months. Some were playful, flirtatious. Others were explicit, detailed in a way that sent cold rage flooding through his veins. Pictures, plans, their secret meetings carefully arranged under the guise of work trips and late nights with friends. Brian, the man Marcus had called a brother, the man who had stood beside him at his wedding. The realization settled over him like a suffocating weight. He had been played, lied to, made a fool of. And yet, as he stood there in the dimly lit kitchen, his face illuminated by the soft glow of Olivia's phone, Marcus didn't lash out. He didn't throw the device across the room. He didn't storm upstairs and demand an explanation. Instead, he exhaled slowly, setting the phone back down exactly as he had found it. Because Marcus wasn't a man who reacted on impulse. No, he was a man who planned, calculated, controlled. Olivia and Brian had made their move in secret, believing him oblivious. Now was his turn, and unlike them, he wouldn't be sloppy. He wouldn't be reckless. He would be precise, deliberate, unforgiving. Marcus turned off the kitchen light, the darkness swallowing him whole. He walked upstairs, his expression unreadable, his pulse steady. Olivia was already in bed, fast asleep, her breathing slow and even. He stood there for a moment, watching her, the woman he had loved, the woman who had just signed her own downfall without even knowing it. He climbed into bed beside her, his movements practiced, controlled. He would play his role a little longer, pretend he was still the trusting, loving husband. Let her believe she had won. Because when he finally struck back, it wouldn't just be an affair she lost. It would be everything. And she would never see it coming. Marcus had always prided himself on his intuition. It was a quiet force within him, a whisper in the back of his mind that had guided him through business deals, friendships, and life's many twists. But when it came to Olivia, he had ignored it for too long. Now, standing alone in their dimly lit bedroom, the weight of reality pressed against his chest. The scent of her perfume lingered in the air, a floral, intoxicating fragrance that once brought him comfort. Now it only sickened him. The evidence sat before him on his laptop screen. Texts, photos, secretly snapped images of Olivia slipping into Brian's car late at night. Screen captures of messages that left no room for doubt. I can't wait to see you again. He doesn't suspect a thing. When are we telling him? A part of Marcus had hoped for a misunderstanding, some rational explanation that would wipe away this nightmare. But there was none. The betrayal wasn't just in the physical act, it was in the deception, the whispered secrets behind his back, the audacity to smile at him, to kiss him while sharing a bed with his best friend. Marcus inhaled deeply, his fingers tightening around the armrest of his chair. A weaker man would rage, would storm out, demand answers, scream, break things. But Marcus was not a weak man. His rage did not explode outward. It folded inward, sharpening into something lethal. Cold, calculated. The masks we wear. When Olivia walked through the front door that night, Marcus was waiting for her. She glanced up from her phone, her expression smooth, unreadable. But Marcus saw it now. The little hesitations, the way she avoided eye contact just a second too long, the way she exhaled before greeting him, as if shaking off another life before stepping into this one. "Hey, babe," she said casually, setting her purse down. "Long day." Marcus smiled. A perfect, effortless smile. "Not too bad," he replied, standing from the couch. "You?" "Ugh." Work was insane. She rolled her eyes, kicking off her heels. "God, I need a drink." Marcus moved to the bar, pouring her a glass of wine. As he handed it to her, his fingers brushed against hers. Once, that touch would have sent warmth through him. Now it was nothing but an act. "You work too hard," he said, watching her take a sip. "I know, right?" She laughed, leaning against the counter. "Sometimes I feel like running away, just escaping it all." Marcus studied her, the way she spoke, the way she deflected. If he hadn't seen the messages himself, he might have missed the subtext. She was already planning her escape. With Brian. The thought burned in his chest, but he forced himself to stay composed. Olivia had no idea that she was standing in the presence of a man who knew everything. And that was his greatest weapon. A visit to the past. That night, Marcus didn't sleep. He lay awake beside Olivia, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing. The woman he had built a life with, the woman he had once trusted more than anyone, was now a stranger. His mind drifted back to the early days, the late-night drives, the whispered promises, the way she used to look at him like he was her entire world. Had it all been a lie? Or had something changed along the way? Marcus had never been a man to dwell on the past, but tonight, the memories played in his mind like an old film reel, flickering with painful clarity. The first time he introduced Olivia to Brian, the way they had laughed together, shared inside jokes. Had it started then? Had they looked at each other behind his back, even in those early days? Marcus exhaled slowly, staring at the ceiling. It didn't matter. The why, the when, none of it mattered anymore. All that mattered was what he would do next. The long game. Morning came, and with it, clarity. Marcus got up early, moving through the house with practiced ease. He prepared Olivia's coffee just the way she liked it, set out her favorite mug, and greeted her with a soft kiss on the forehead when she walked into the kitchen. She smiled up at him, eyes filled with feigned warmth. "You're the best," she murmured. Marcus chuckled, sipping his own coffee. "I try." It was almost poetic, he thought, how effortlessly she lied. But she wasn't the only one who could wear a mask. Olivia had made her move. Now it was his turn. And unlike her, Marcus played for keeps. Marcus sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the dim glow of his home through the windshield. Inside, Olivia was probably texting Brian, laughing at his ignorance, believing she was untouchable. His jaw clenched, but his face remained impassive. He had spent years perfecting self-control, and now it would serve him well. Confrontation was tempting, barging in, exposing her lies, watching her face crumble under the weight of her betrayal. But that would be too easy, too impulsive. No, he wanted her to think she had won. He wanted her to dig her own grave, oblivious to the noose tightening around her throat. So, he took a deep breath, exhaled slowly, and stepped out of the car. Playing the role. The moment he walked through the front door, Olivia looked up from her phone, a flicker of something. Nervousness? Guilt? Flashing across her face before she masked it with a casual smile. "Hey, babe. Long day?" she asked, setting her phone face down on the table. He smiled, warm and weary. "Yeah, just exhausted." He stepped forward, leaned down, and kissed her cheek. She flinched, barely, but he noticed. Good. He dropped his briefcase by the door, loosening his tie, and walked into the kitchen. Behind him, Olivia let out a breath she didn't know she had been holding. She thought she was safe. She had no idea. The first steps. Over the next few weeks, Marcus played the devoted, unsuspecting husband. He kissed Olivia goodbye in the mornings, sent sweet messages throughout the day, and listened intently when she talked about work. Meanwhile, she grew careless. She started staying out late, offering weak excuses. A work dinner, babe. It ran longer than I expected. Ugh, you know how Sarah is. She just wouldn't stop talking at the cafe. I went to a late yoga class, but my phone died, so I couldn't text you. Lie after lie, woven with confidence, delivered with ease. She thought he didn't notice the way she checked her phone more often, how she kept it angled away from him, how she smiled at her screen before quickly locking it. She thought she was fooling him. But every lie was ammunition. Every deception, a stepping stone in the foundation of her own downfall. The preparation. Marcus wasn't just watching. He was planning. First, the finances. Olivia assumed they shared everything. Joint accounts, a single mortgage, a clear and equal distribution of assets. What she didn't know was that Marcus had been smart, quietly building his own wealth in places she couldn't reach. Late at night, while she lay in bed texting Brian, Marcus sat at his office, shifting investments, closing accounts, securing assets under names she had no access to. By the time she thought to fight for what was his, there would be nothing left for her to take. Next, the evidence. He installed a program on her laptop that logged every keystroke, every email, every chat. He set up a hidden camera in the living room, just in case Brian ever got too comfortable. He went through their phone bills, noting the late-night calls, the frequent texts. And when the evidence became undeniable, when he had enough to dismantle them both, he sent copies to a secure location. A failsafe. He was meticulous, patient, methodical. They had played a game of deception. Now, he was rewriting the rules, letting her win. When Olivia finally worked up the courage to mention divorce, Marcus played his role perfectly. It was a Friday night. She sat across from him at the dinner table, her wine glass trembling slightly in her grasp. "Marcus, I think we need to talk." He looked up, setting his fork down, tilting his head in quiet curiosity. "Okay." A flicker of hesitation, a deep breath, then the rehearsed speech. "I love you, but I don't think we're working anymore. I felt disconnected for a while, and she sighed, lowering her gaze, "I just think we'd be happier apart." Marcus studied her, the way she couldn't quite meet his eyes, the way she fidgeted with her ring. She expected a fight. She wanted him to break, to beg, to make it easier for her to justify what she had done. Instead, he nodded. "If that's how you feel, I won't stop you." Her eyes widened, just for a second, before she masked it with relief. "I just want this to be amicable." "Of course," he agreed, smiling gently. "Amicable." She exhaled, nodding, believing she had pulled off the perfect escape. But Marcus knew something she didn't. She wasn't escaping. She was walking straight into the fire. And he was the one holding the match. The divorce came swiftly, a quiet storm tearing through Marcus's life and leaving behind a false sense of calm. Olivia filed first, of course. She was eager to move on, eager to parade her newfound love with Brian, as if she were the protagonist of some grand romance. She probably imagined herself as the bold woman who had the courage to leave a loveless marriage for true happiness. Marcus let her have that illusion. He sat across from her in the sterile conference room of their divorce attorney's office, the tension between them masked by polite, rehearsed indifference. The lawyer spoke in measured tones, discussing asset division and final agreements, but Marcus barely listened. His mind had already moved far beyond this moment. Olivia, smug and composed, barely looked at him. She believed she had won. "I think this is fair," she said, tapping the papers with a manicured nail. "We don't need to drag this out." Fair. That word almost made Marcus laugh. The house, the very home they had built together, was all she truly wanted. She thought it symbolized her victory, proof that she was the one moving forward while Marcus was left behind. "I won't fight you on it," Marcus said, voice smooth, calm. A flicker of surprise crossed Olivia's face, quickly concealed. She had expected him to resist, to plead, to argue. But instead, he simply signed where he was supposed to and pushed the papers back toward the lawyer. The divorce was finalized within weeks. And then, just like that, she was gone. The illusion of victory. The day Olivia officially moved out was unceremonious. She packed her things in neatly labeled boxes, stacking them by the door like she was relocating to a better life. Brian was there, helping her load up the car, his presence so casual that it would have seemed normal to anyone who didn't know the truth. Marcus stood in the doorway, watching. Olivia glanced at him only once. "I hope we can be civil," she said, offering a thin smile. Marcus returned it. "Of course, Olivia. Civil." She gave a small nod, as if satisfied, then walked out for the last time. The house felt different after she left. Empty, yes, but also lighter. As if her presence had been a weight pressing down on him all these years, a suffocating force he hadn't recognized until it was gone. That night, Marcus poured himself a drink and walked through the quiet halls of what used to be their shared home. He stopped in the bedroom, staring at the empty closet where her clothes once hung. Then he smiled. She thought she had one. She had no idea. The first cracks appear. Marcus didn't need to wait long to see the consequences of Olivia's choices. At first, her life with Brian was a perfect Instagram fairy tale. Candlelit dinners, weekend getaways, extravagant shopping trips. She flooded social media with photos of their new beginning, captioning them with insipid quotes about love and destiny. Brian, too, basked in the glow of their supposed happiness, acting as if he had stolen a prize rather than destroyed a friendship. But fairy tales are fragile things. And Olivia had no idea that the house she was so proud of, the very house she had fought to keep, was a ticking time bomb. Marcus had refinanced it before the divorce, ensuring that she now held a mortgage far greater than she could afford on her own. She had assumed, foolishly, that Marcus had little beyond their shared assets. She had no idea of the accounts he had quietly built, the wealth he had protected from her grasping hands. And Brian? He had made the mistake of believing his job was secure. But Marcus had connections, strategic whispers in the right ears, a few carefully placed rumors, and soon Brian found himself in a meeting with HR, being handed a severance package. Within weeks of their so-called fresh start, Olivia and Brian found themselves drowning in bills. The cracks in their relationship began to show. A silent victory, Marcus watched from afar, never interfering directly, never needing to. Olivia started selling off pieces of their old life. Her designer bags, the jewelry she once flaunted, even the expensive furniture she had insisted on keeping. Brian, once so cocky, now looked exhausted, worn down by the weight of their financial struggles. The house, their supposed prize, became an anchor pulling them further into debt. One night, Marcus received a text from an unknown number. "Marcus, can we talk?" He didn't need to check who it was. He simply stared at the message for a long moment before deleting it. Olivia had made her choice. Now, she had to live with it. And Marcus? He was free. Olivia and Brian wasted no time parading their newfound happiness. Social media was flooded with snapshots of their seemingly perfect life. Smiling selfies in expensive restaurants, tropical vacations, Olivia showing off new designer handbags. Marcus watched from a distance, expression unreadable. Let them celebrate. Let them bask in the illusion of their success. Because the real storm was coming. And they had no idea. The trap they never saw coming. Olivia had believed she was clever during the divorce proceedings. She had taken the house. The same house Marcus had worked tirelessly to build with her. The house they had once planned to raise a family in. She thought it was her prize. What she didn't realize was that Marcus had planned for this moment long before she even handed him the divorce papers. A year before their marriage crumbled, Marcus had refinanced the house, pulling out a significant portion of its equity under the guise of a strategic investment. The mortgage had nearly doubled, but Marcus never worried. He had the means to handle it. Now, it wasn't his problem anymore. It was hers, and she was drowning. The money slipping through her fingers. At first, Olivia didn't notice. She was too caught up in the excitement of her new life with Brian. The shopping sprees, the luxurious getaways, the high-end dining. It all felt so intoxicating, so freeing. But soon, the bills started rolling in. The mortgage payment alone was a crushing weight, more than she had anticipated. Then came the property taxes, the maintenance, the utilities. Before, Marcus had handled it all seamlessly. Now it was her burden. And Brian? He wasn't as financially stable as he had pretended to be. Brian's downfall. Marcus knew Brian's weaknesses. He had once called the man his best friend, and in doing so, had learned every crack in his foundation. Brian had always lived above his means. Flashy cars, expensive whiskey, custom suits. He liked to appear wealthy, even when his bank account told a different story. So Marcus had made a few calls. A whisper in the right ear here. A casual conversation there. A well-timed, anonymous tip to Brian's employer. The result? Brian was fired. Not in a dramatic, security-escorted way. No, it was much more subtle. His company, already struggling, had been looking for an excuse to downsize. Marcus had simply given them the perfect justification. Sorry, Brian. We have to let you go. It's just business. Just business. Brian tried to play it cool at first. He told Olivia it was temporary, that he had connections, that he bounced back quickly. But the weeks stretched on, and the job offers didn't come. Marcus made sure of that. The beginning of their cracks. The first real fight between Olivia and Brian happened over a declined credit card. They had gone out to dinner, one of their usual extravagant outings. But when Brian confidently handed over his card, the waiter returned with a polite but firm smile. I'm sorry, sir, but your payment didn't go through. Olivia's face burned with embarrassment. Brian stammered, tried another card, declined. A third. This one worked, but barely. By the time they left the restaurant, Olivia was fuming. What the hell is going on, Brian? She demanded once they got home. Brian rubbed his temples, trying to come up with an excuse. It's just a temporary thing. Some banking issues. I'll sort it out. But Olivia wasn't stupid. She had lived in comfort for too long to suddenly feel the walls closing in. And then the final blow came. The unraveling. The mortgage statement arrived in the mail a few days later. Olivia opened it casually, expecting to see a manageable number. But when her eyes landed on the total amount due, the color drained from her face. This can't be right. The mortgage was almost double what she thought it was. How? Panic set in as she frantically flipped through the pages, trying to make sense of it. Then she saw the fine print. The refinance. Marcus had planned this. He had left her with a financial landmine, and she had walked right into it. That son of a... She choked, her hands shaking. Brian came home to find her pacing, eyes wild. Did you know about this? She snapped, shoving the statement in his face. Brian read it, and for the first time, real fear crept into his expression. They were in trouble. Big trouble. And Marcus? He was nowhere to be found. He had disappeared into his new life, untouched, untouchable. And as Olivia and Brian sat in their once beautiful home, now a suffocating weight around their necks, they both knew the truth. Marcus hadn't just walked away from them. He had left them to burn. And the flames were closing in fast. Olivia always loved attention, the validation, the feeling of being admired. She thrived on it, lived for it. And in the first few weeks after moving in with Brian, she bathed in it. She posted pictures of their perfect life, dinners at high-end restaurants, weekend getaways, late-night selfies with Brian's arm wrapped possessively around her waist. New beginnings. The comments flooded in. So happy for you. You deserve this, girl. Power couple. It was everything Olivia wanted. The illusion of success. The appearance of happiness. But illusions are fragile. And Marcus knew exactly how to shatter this one. The first cracks, it started subtly. A shift in the way people looked at Olivia. The way conversations died the moment she walked into a room. She noticed it first at brunch with her girlfriends. The same women who had gushed over her fresh start were suddenly reserved, exchanging glances when she spoke. She brushed it off. Maybe they're just jealous. But then came the whispers. She saw in the office, too. Coworkers who used to chat with her over coffee now kept their distance. Even her boss, who had always been friendly, barely acknowledged her. At first, she told herself it was nothing. Paranoia. Then she got the email. An anonymous sender. No subject line, just an attachment. When she opened it, her blood ran cold. Screenshots. Text between her and Brian. Flirty messages, intimate details, explicit exchanges, all time-stamped from when she was still married to Marcus. She scrolled down, heart hammering. Photos. Candid shots of her and Brian sneaking around, meeting in hotel lobbies, kissing in parking lots. And then, a list of email addresses in the to field. It wasn't just sent to her. It was sent to everyone. Her family, her friends, her colleagues, even Brian's former boss. A wave of nausea crashed over her. No, 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 no. The fallout. The calls started within minutes. Her mother. Olivia, tell me this isn't true. Her best friend. What the hell, Liv? You lie to all of us. Her boss. We need to have a conversation about your future at this company. She slammed her phone down, hands trembling. Then she heard Brian curse from the other room. What the hell is this? He stormed in, his phone clenched in his fist, face red with fury. Do you know what you've done? He growled. She blinked. Me? This is your fault, he snapped, throwing the phone onto the table. She grabbed it, scrolling through his messages. Former colleagues, mutual friends, everyone was turning on him. His name was being dragged through the mud. Brian had built his reputation on being the charming, trustworthy guy, a loyal friend, a stand-up man. Now the world saw him for what he really was. A liar, a cheater, a man who betrayed his best friend. Olivia opened her own social media. Her latest post, just last night, a smiling picture of her and Brian drinking champagne, was flooded with comments. Wow, you really did Marcus dirty. This is disgusting. Imagine ruining your marriage just to end up with him. Trash attracts trash. Her stomach twisted. The love, the admiration gone. And then, the final blow. A comment from Marcus himself. Just 4 words. Enjoy your new life. Nothing else. No insults. No anger. Just a quiet, calculated farewell. The silence that followed was even louder. The beginning of the end. Brian paced the living room, muttering under his breath. His phone rang again, and this time, Olivia saw the caller ID. It was his mother. He ignored it. Olivia sank onto the couch, head in her hands. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. They were supposed to be happy, untouchable. But Marcus hadn't yelled. He hadn't begged. He hadn't fought. Instead, he had waited, watched. And when the time was right, he had dismantled their entire world with a single email. Olivia's hands clenched into fists. She had underestimated him. And now, she was paying the price. The soft hum of conversation filled the upscale rooftop bar, a quiet symphony of success. Glasses clinked, laughter rippled through the air, and the city skyline stretched endlessly beyond the glass railing. Marcus leaned back in his seat, rolling the crystal tumbler between his fingers, watching the amber liquid swirl. It had been months since his world imploded, since his so-called best friend and the woman he once loved had ripped apart the life he thought was his. Now, as he looked around the table, surrounded by sharp minds, industry leaders, people who actually respected him, he realized something profound. He had never belonged in the life Olivia had forced him into. And now, He was exactly where he was meant to be. A calculated rise. Marcus had never been reckless with money. While Olivia and Brian celebrated their hollow victory, he spent his time carefully maneuvering behind the scenes. First, he made sure his name resurfaced in the right circles. A few strategic investments, a couple of power moves in the corporate world, and suddenly, people were talking about him again. Not as the man who had been betrayed, but as the man who had bounced back stronger. His business, once something he'd quietly built in the background while Olivia mocked his hobbies, now demanded attention. He expanded aggressively, leveraging contacts he'd cultivated over the years. Contacts Olivia had dismissed as unimportant. Within weeks, he had secured 2 lucrative partnerships. Within months, he had made back everything he lost in the divorce. And then some. Watching their downfall from the top, Olivia and Brian had moved fast after the divorce. Too fast. Their reckless spending, their desperate attempts to construct a picture-perfect life, had blinded them to reality. Marcus didn't need to interfere much, just a nudge here and there. He made sure the refinancing on the house Olivia had fought so hard to keep was a ticking time bomb. She thought she had won it. She didn't realize it came with a bleeding mortgage, one she couldn't afford now that Brian was unemployed. Brian's job loss hadn't been accidental either. Marcus had merely illuminated certain moral concerns to the right people. No company wanted a man with a reputation for deception and backstabbing. It was almost poetic. While they struggled to make ends meet, Marcus flourished. Reputation is everything. The real power move wasn't financial. It was social. Marcus knew how people worked. Olivia had been obsessed with perception, with appearing successful, admired, desired. So, he dismantled her reputation the way she had tried to dismantle his. It started subtly. A rumor here, a conversation there, a carefully placed comment at a networking event, a well-timed revelation over dinner with an influential colleague. Nothing loud, nothing obvious. But soon, Olivia found invitations drying up. Her social circle shrank. The women she used to gossip with now whispered behind her back. The men who had once admired her charm and beauty now saw her as a cautionary tale. Brian fared even worse. He had built his entire persona on being the charismatic, trustworthy guy. Now, trust was the last thing anyone associated with his name. They weren't just struggling financially. They were struggling socially. And Marcus? He was being invited to exclusive events. Doors were opening for him that had once been shut. Investors sought him out. CEOs asked for his opinion. He wasn't just recovering. He was rising. The night that changed everything. On a particularly crisp evening, Marcus found himself at an elegant charity gala, a place Olivia would have killed to be invited to. Dressed in a tailored black suit, he moved effortlessly through the room, exchanging pleasantries with people whose names actually mattered. A senator, a billionaire investor, a renowned author. And then, as he stood by the bar, sipping a smooth single malt, he felt it. The eyes on him. He turned. Across the room, standing just inside the entrance, was Olivia. She hadn't been invited. She had come as someone's plus one, probably hoping to claw her way back into the social sphere she had once dominated. But she looked different. There was a strain in her posture, a tightness around her eyes. Gone was the effortless confidence. In its place was something more desperate, more hollow. For a long moment, their eyes met. Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to say something. But before she could, a stunning woman, Marcus's date for the evening, placed a hand on his arm, laughing at something he'd just said. Marcus smiled at her, not breaking eye contact with Olivia. Then, without a word, he turned back to his conversation, dismissing Olivia from his mind as if she were nothing. Because now she was... And that was the moment he knew he had truly won. Marcus had just returned home from an intense evening at a high-profile networking event. The night had been a success, deals secured, new connections made, and his name spoken with admiration. He stepped into his penthouse, the city skyline stretching beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, shimmering with opportunity. Pouring himself a glass of bourbon, he let the warmth of his success settle in. Life was finally aligning in his favor. The weight of betrayal had been lifted, replaced with an unshakable confidence. Then his phone buzzed. Marcus glanced at the screen. The name glowing against the dark background made his chest tighten, not with longing, not with anger, but with pure, detached curiosity. Olivia. He let it ring. The sound echoed in the silence of his penthouse, each vibration a reminder of the woman who had once shared his bed, his dreams, only to rip them apart with whispered lies and stolen moments. Eventually, the ringing stopped. A few seconds later, his phone vibrated again. A voicemail. He set the glass down and stared at the notification, debating whether to listen. Then, almost amused, he pressed play and lifted the phone to his ear. "Marcus, it's me." Her voice was different, less sure of itself, stripped of its usual confidence. I I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. And I get it. I really do." A hollow laugh. A nervous breath. "But I need to talk to you." Marcus remained motionless, his expression unreadable. "Please." A pause, heavy with unspoken regret. "I need to see you." Then silence. The message ended. Marcus exhaled slowly, setting the phone down. He wasn't surprised. He had been expecting this moment, even if he didn't know exactly when it would come. Olivia had made her choice, one she had been so certain of, so eager to embrace. But choices had consequences, and reality had a way of catching up. Still, he didn't respond. He picked up his bourbon, took a slow sip, and let the city lights remind him of how far he had come. She needed to talk. She needed to see him. But need was a funny thing. It was only urgent when desperation replaced arrogance. And Marcus? He had no need for her anymore. Marcus had almost forgotten about them. Almost. His life was better than ever, business thriving, personal life fulfilling, mind at peace. Olivia and Brian? They were relics of a past he had burned to ashes. But then one evening his phone buzzed. A notification. A name he hadn't seen in months. Brian. A message. "Marcus, man, I messed up. We both did. Can we meet? Just to talk." Marcus exhaled slowly, rolling the words over in his mind. "We both did." The sheer arrogance of it made him smirk. Brian still thought they were on equal ground, that Marcus had played a part in this downfall, that he was somehow to blame. Marcus didn't reply. Instead, he clicked on Brian's profile. What he saw made him chuckle. Brian's once flashy posts, his expensive dinners, luxury vacations, smug selfies with Olivia, were gone, replaced by silence. His account was nearly barren, save for a few pathetic attempts at positivity, motivational quotes, vague complaints about fake friends, and the occasional shot of a cheap beer in a dimly lit bar. It was all crumbling. Marcus set his phone down, poured himself a glass of bourbon, and leaned back in his chair. Then, another notification. Olivia. A missed call, then a voicemail. He hesitated for only a second before pressing play. "Marcus, a shaky breath. "I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but please, can we talk?" A sniffle. I don't know what to do anymore." Silence. Then, in a voice so quiet he barely caught it. "I miss you." Marcus closed his eyes and let the moment settle. This was it. The inevitable moment when the past came crawling back, when the consequences of their choices came full circle. They had gambled everything on their affair, their happiness, their reputations, their futures. And now, they had nothing. Marcus let out a low chuckle and took a sip of his drink. They had chosen each other. Let them suffer together. He deleted the messages without another thought. Then, with a deep breath, he picked up his phone again, this time to text the woman waiting for him in the other room. "Sorry, had to deal with something. Be there in a sec." Because he had moved on. And they were just ghosts of a life that no longer existed. Marcus stepped out of the restaurant, the crisp night air wrapping around him like a familiar embrace. The city was alive, its pulse steady, cars humming down the boulevard, neon lights flickering against the glass facades of high-rise buildings, laughter spilling from sidewalk cafes. He adjusted his cufflinks, stealing a glance at the woman beside him, Sophia, an elegant brunette with sharp eyes and a sharper wit. They had met a few weeks ago, and though it was nothing serious, her company was a refreshing contrast to the chaos he had left behind. Then, as he took a step forward, he saw her. Olivia. She stood near the curb, half hidden in the shadows of a street lamp. At first, he almost didn't recognize her. The woman who had once carried herself with an air of untouchable confidence now looked diminished. Her once pristine hair hung in loose waves, unkempt and dull. Her face, which had once been adorned with effortless elegance, now bore the weight of exhaustion. Dark circles under her eyes, lips pressed together in uncertainty. Her clothes, though still stylish, lacked the expensive polish they once had. The small, unconscious fidgeting of her fingers betrayed her nerves. For the briefest moment, something inside Marcus stirred. Not sympathy, not anger, just recognition. Recognition of a past that had burned itself into his memory, a life that felt like it belonged to someone else now. Olivia stepped forward hesitantly, her eyes scanning his face, searching for something, understanding, maybe, or some remnant of the man she had once known. Marcus. His name left her lips like a confession. Sophia turned slightly, watching with quiet curiosity. Marcus didn't move, didn't flinch. He simply regarded Olivia with the calm, unreadable expression that had become his armor. Olivia, he replied, his tone measured. She exhaled sharply, as if hearing him say her name released some unbearable weight from her chest. I wasn't sure if you'd stop, she admitted, wringing her hands. I wasn't sure if you'd even acknowledge me. He raised an eyebrow. Why wouldn't I? She hesitated. Because I destroyed you. Because I betrayed you. Because I thought I could leave you behind and never look back. But she didn't say any of that. Instead, she swallowed, casting a fleeting glance at Sophia before returning her gaze to Marcus. I needed to talk to you. Marcus exhaled, his patience thinning. About what? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her hands trembled. Marcus didn't offer her comfort. Finally, she forced herself to speak. I made a mistake. A hollow, humorless chuckle escaped his lips before he could stop it. A mistake, he echoed, tilting his head slightly. Olivia, you didn't just make a mistake. You made a choice. Repeatedly. She flinched. I know. Silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. The sounds of the city around them blurred into white noise. Sophia, sensing the weight of the moment, placed a gentle hand on Marcus's arm. I'll wait in the car, she murmured. Marcus nodded, watching as she disappeared toward the black sedan parked nearby. Now it was just him and Olivia. Everything's falling apart, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Brian left, she continued, forcing out the words. He blamed me for everything. He lost his job. The house is too expensive. I don't know how I'm going to. She cut herself off, pressing a hand to her forehead as if trying to steady herself. Marcus remained unmoved. And why are you telling me this? She blinked, momentarily stunned by his lack of emotion. Because, she trailed off, her breath hitching. Because I don't know what else to do. There it was. Not an apology. Not regret. Desperation. She hadn't come to make amends. She had come because she had nowhere else to turn. Marcus took a slow step closer, his presence looming over her. You made your bed, Olivia. Now you get to lie in it. Tears welled in her eyes. I never meant to hurt you, Marcus. He let out a quiet, bitter laugh. That's the thing, Olivia. You never meant to. But you did it anyway. She reached out, fingers trembling, as if she wanted to touch him. He took a step back. She dropped her hand, as if burned. Marcus tilted his head slightly, studying her. Then, with a calm finality, he spoke the words that sealed her fate. You don't exist to me anymore. Her breath caught. And then, just like that, he turned away. He didn't look back. Didn't acknowledge the quiet sob that escaped her lips. Didn't stop as she whispered his name one last time, a ghost of what once was. By the time he slid into the car beside Sophia, Olivia had become nothing more than a fading shadow in his past. Sophia glanced at him, searching his face for any trace of emotion. Are you okay? She asked softly. Marcus exhaled slowly, rolling his shoulders as if shaking off the last remnants of an old weight. Yeah, he said, a small, genuine smile forming. I really am. And as the car pulled away from the curb, leaving Olivia standing alone under the flickering street lamp, Marcus realized something. He wasn't just moving on. He was free. Brian always thought he could land on his feet. He had always been the smooth talker, the charmer, the guy who could weave himself out of any mess with a cocky grin and a few well-placed words. Not this time. Marcus had ensured that. At first, Brian shrugged off his job loss. No big deal, he told himself. He had connections, a solid resume. He'd get another high-paying position in no time. But Marcus had been strategic. He didn't just get Brian fired, he blacklisted him. A whisper in the right ears. A few industry-wide emails exposing Brian's ethical misconduct. A LinkedIn post that subtly warned employers about hiring a man with trust issues. Suddenly, no one would return Brian's calls. Recruiters ghosted him. Former colleagues avoided him. The corporate world had turned its back, and he was left standing in the wreckage, wondering how the hell it had all gone so wrong. But the real unraveling began at home. The fracture in the fairy tale. Living with Olivia was supposed to be perfect. They had fought for this, lied, cheated, and burned bridges for this. But paradise soured quickly. The first cracks appeared when the bills started piling up. The house Olivia had claimed in the divorce wasn't the luxury prize she had imagined. It was an anchor dragging them both under. Mortgage payments loomed over them like a storm cloud, and with Brian out of work, the financial strain seeped into every conversation. What do you mean you don't have any savings? Olivia snapped one evening, arms crossed as she glared at Brian across the small kitchen table. Brian exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. I didn't think I'd need it. I thought I'd get another job by now. Yeah? And what the hell have you been doing all day? Brian's temper flared. Oh, I'm sorry, Olivia. I must have missed the part where you're rolling in cash. You expected me to support us, right? Well, news flash, I can't. And maybe if you weren't so busy buying designer crap, we wouldn't be drowning in debt. The argument exploded from there. The resentment they had ignored, the guilt they had buried, it all came flooding to the surface. Olivia had thought leaving Marcus for Brian would make her happy. But Marcus had been stable, reliable. Brian was reckless, unraveling. And she hated him for it. The isolation. Brian's fall wasn't just financial, it was social. Marcus had been meticulous. He had made sure the people Brian once considered friends knew exactly what kind of man he was. First, they stopped inviting him out. Then, they stopped answering his messages. Then, they blocked him entirely. One by one, his old life vanished. Even the people who had once laughed at Marcus behind his back now saw Brian for what he really was, a traitor, a parasite, a man with no loyalty. There was no one left to turn to. Not even Olivia. The breaking point. The night Olivia finally left, it was raining. Brian sat on the couch, beer in hand, staring at the blank television screen. Olivia had barely spoken to him all week. And then, with a single suitcase in hand, she appeared at the doorway. I can't do this anymore. Brian let out a hollow laugh, shaking his head. Wow, that easy, huh? You just pack a bag and leave like it meant nothing. Olivia's expression was cold. Like it meant nothing? Brian, it meant nothing. We weren't in love. We were just two shitty people using each other. Her words hit him harder than he expected. She was right. They hadn't built a life together. They had built a graveyard of their own choices. He watched as she walked out the door without looking back. For the first time in his life, Brian was truly alone. The final message. A week later, Marcus's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. He already knew who it was. You win. Marcus stared at the words for a long time. Then, without hesitation, he deleted the message. Because there was no game. Just consequences. Marcus sat in his sleek, modern apartment, a glass of whiskey in his hand, the amber liquid catching the soft glow of the city lights outside. It had been a year since his life had imploded, since his world had been upended by the betrayal of the two people he had trusted most. Now, sitting in the quiet of his sanctuary, he realized something surprising. He felt free. For months after the divorce, he had been consumed by the need to see Olivia and Brian fall. He had orchestrated their financial ruin, their social humiliation, their professional collapse. Every step had been calculated, every move precise. And now, they were nothing more than cautionary tales, shadows in his rearview mirror. And yet, revenge, as satisfying as it had been, was no longer what drove him. He had built himself back up, stronger, sharper, untouchable. His career had skyrocketed, his investments had flourished, and for the first time in years, he was living on his own terms. Tonight, he wasn't drinking alone. Across from him, Sophia sat, an amused smirk playing on her lips as she swirled the wine in her glass. She was different from Olivia in every way, effortlessly confident, intelligent, unshaken by superficiality. Where Olivia had been manipulative, Sophia was refreshingly direct. She studied him for a moment, tilting her head. You're quieter tonight. Marcus took a slow sip of his drink before replying, just thinking. She arched an eyebrow. Dangerous habit. A chuckle escaped him. He hadn't laughed like this in a long time, genuinely, effortlessly. Sophia leaned forward, resting her elbow on the table. Let me guess. Olivia? The mention of the name didn't sting the way it once did. He exhaled, setting his glass down. Not really. Just everything. Sophia watched him carefully, waiting. She never rushed him, never pushed. He ran a hand through his hair. For a while, I thought the best revenge was making them suffer. But now, he met her gaze. I don't think about them anymore. And that, I think, is the real victory. Sophia nodded approvingly. It is. The conversation drifted into lighter territory. Plans for the weekend, an upcoming business deal Marcus was excited about. The weight of his past no longer felt like a burden, just a chapter he had finally closed. Later that night, as he walked Sophia to the door, she turned to face him, her dark eyes searching his. You deserve to be happy, Marcus. For so long, he had defined himself by his pain, by his revenge, by the damage done to him and the damage he had inflicted in return. But standing there, watching Sophia smile at him like he was more than just the sum of his past, he finally believed her. He pulled her close, pressing a slow, lingering kiss to her lips. And as he did, he realized he was done looking back. The future was his. And for the first time in a long time, he was ready for it. The night was quiet, save for the distant hum of the city below. Marcus sat in his study, the soft glow of the desk lamp casting long shadows across the room. A glass of whiskey rested beside him, untouched, the amber liquid swirling gently as he rotated the glass between his fingers. His laptop screen glowed with an open email, yet another desperate attempt from Olivia. Marcus, I know you hate me, but I have nowhere else to turn. Please, just hear me out. He leaned back, exhaling through his nose, a quiet scoff escaping his lips. Hate? No. Hate required effort, emotion, and he had given Olivia far too much of both already. The past year had been a crucible, a trial by fire that had burned away the weakness in him and reforged him into something stronger, sharper. He had not just survived, he had thrived. Olivia and Brian, on the other hand, had learned the most brutal lesson of all. Betrayal is easy, but consequences are relentless. He opened a new tab and scrolled through the news. Brian's fall from grace had been spectacular. Once a rising name in the business world, Brian had been blacklisted from every major firm worth working for. The whispers of his unethical behavior had spread like wildfire, carefully planted by Marcus in just the right ears. Now, no company wanted the risk of associating with a man known for both professional and personal betrayal. And Olivia? She had lost everything. The house she had so arrogantly claimed had been repossessed after she failed to keep up with the mortgage. Brian had left her, unable to handle the financial ruin and public humiliation. Friends who had once fawned over her had disappeared the moment her wealth and status crumbled. Now, she was alone. Marcus ran a hand over the smooth surface of his desk, feeling the cool wood beneath his fingertips. The old version of him, the man who had once loved Olivia with an unguarded heart, might have felt pity, might have considered throwing her a lifeline. But not this Marcus. Pity was for fools. He took a slow sip of his whiskey, the burn of it a satisfying reminder of how far he had come. He thought back to the moment Olivia had served him divorce papers, her face smug with victory, certain that she was leaving him behind, trading up for something better. She had walked away thinking she had won. She hadn't realized that she was playing checkers while he was playing chess. Marcus had been patient, methodical. He had let them believe they had beaten him while he quietly set the stage for their downfall. He hadn't needed to scream, hadn't needed to lash out. Revenge was best served cold, and he had served it with precision. But the greatest revenge of all, it wasn't the financial ruin. It wasn't the public disgrace. It was the fact that he no longer cared. Olivia had wanted to destroy him. Instead, she had freed him to become a man who no longer needed her, who no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. He closed the email without responding, letting the silence be his final answer. Because in the end, the best lesson Olivia and Brian could ever learn was this. They weren't worth his time. And they never had been. The city stretched out before him, a shimmering tapestry of light and motion. From his penthouse balcony, Marcus watched as headlights wove through the streets below as nameless figures rushed through the night, each lost in their own world of ambition, regret, and desire. He took a slow sip of whiskey, letting the rich burn coat his throat before exhaling. The ice clinked softly against the glass, the only sound in the quiet expanse of his new home. It had been a year since everything fell apart. A year since Olivia had left, since Brian had betrayed him, since Marcus had let go of the man he once was. And now he had built something greater. The penthouse was proof of that. Sleek, modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the skyline like a living painting. Success lived in every polished surface, every meticulously chosen detail. But it wasn't the material things that satisfied him. It was the knowledge that he had won. Not just over them, over the version of himself that had once begged for love from someone unworthy of it. He had turned pain into power. And they had turned their betrayal into their own downfall. Marcus swirled the amber liquid in his glass, his mind drifting back to the last time he'd seen Olivia. That chance encounter outside the restaurant. The way she had looked at him, like a ghost of the woman she used to be. Her confidence, her smugness, her arrogance, all stripped away. I made a mistake, she had whispered, her voice barely audible above the city noise. Marcus had looked at her then, really looked at her. The weight of her choices had settled into the lines on her face, the exhaustion in her eyes. She was living proof that karma had a longer memory than she ever did. He had smiled. Yes, you did. And then he walked away. She had made her choice. And now, she had to live with it. A faint vibration on the balcony's marble ledge pulled him from his thoughts. His phone. A message. From her. Not Olivia. Someone new. Someone different. On my way up, I hope you didn't start the wine without me. A small smirk played on his lips. He finished the last sip of whiskey and set the glass down, turning to head inside. The past was behind him. The best revenge wasn't anger. It wasn't destruction. It was thriving. It was walking away from the wreckage and building something beautiful. It was living so well that the people who tried to break you had no choice but to watch from the sidelines, drowning in their own regrets. Marcus adjusted the cuff of his shirt, exhaled, and stepped inside. It was time to live.